Quarter 2 study guide. So question number 1 wants us to evaluate a quadratic function. Alright. So what we're going to do is that anywhere that I see x, I'm going to replace with a pair of parentheses. And inside of that parentheses, I'm going to plug in this negative 4. So again, where I see x, I'm going to replace with parentheses. Okay. And then inside of that parentheses, I'm going to plug in this negative 4. Okay, so I plug it into both. And again, you can plug this into your calculator, but I'm going to calculate this by hand. Negative 4 squared is negative 4 multiplied by negative 4, which is positive 16. All right. So the 7, I'm going to multiply by negative 4, and I get negative 28. And the negative 3, I'm going to bring down. Okay. So now I'm going to calculate 16 minus 28 is a negative 12, all right, and negative 12 minus 3 is negative 15, all right. So again, if there was a number in front of this parentheses, you'll also multiply it, but again, you have to remember that a negative 4 times negative 4 is why we got a positive 16, all right. So topic 2, we're trying to add or subtract polynomials, all right. Whenever you're subtracting polynomials, so again, I see a minus sign, that means I'm subtracting. All the signs in the second parentheses are going to change, all right? Because technically in front of here is a negative 1. So when you distribute that negative 1, the positive 2x squared is going to turn into a negative 2x squared. The negative 3 is going to turn into a positive 3x. And the negative 5 is going to turn into a positive 5, all right? Everything in the first parentheses, you always bring it down, all right? So we bring these down, okay? Now we're going to combine like terms, okay? So the 6x squared like term is the negative 2x squared. Here you're going to subtract 6 minus 2 is 4x squared. All right. Here I have a 1x, all right, a positive 1x, okay? And that's going to go with my positive 3x. Here I'm going to add and I'm going to get positive 4x, okay? And then I have a negative 7 as a constant and a positive 5. Negative 7 plus 5 is negative 2. All right. So again, guys, just like that. Okay. So topic number 3. So topic number 3 wants us to multiply binomials. All right. Whenever we're multiplying binomials, we're going to have to FOIL, all right, or distribute. So the 2x, I'm going to multiply by each of these first two terms. 2x multiplied by 3x. 2 times 3 is 6. X times x is x squared, all right? 2x multiplied by negative 5, 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. And because we're not multiplying x by x, we just bring only just the x. Now I'm going to distribute the positive 1 to each of these two terms. 1 times 3x is positive 3x, okay? 1 times negative 5 is negative 5, all right? So now we're going to combine like terms. These are the only two like terms because those are the only x's. So the 6x squared I would bring down. Negative 10x plus 3x is a smaller negative when you add it, and you'll get negative 7x. And then the negative 5 you would bring down. All right. So again, guys, just like that. Okay. So next question. We're trying to solve and graph the inequality. Whenever you're solving, you're finding something. In this case, we're finding x, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is try to get x all by itself, okay? So to get x all by itself, I would need to move my constant to the other side by adding 11 to both sides. That would get canceled. Now I would have 2x is greater than or equal to 3 plus 11 is 14, all right? Now I'm going to divide by 2, divide by 2. So my x is going to be greater than or equal to 14 divided by 2 is 7. Okay? Because we did not divide by a negative, this operator stays the same direction. If we divided by a negative, then we would flip this to the other way. Okay? So now you're going to try to figure out if it's open or closed. All right? Whenever you have no line underneath, it is open. Here we do have a line underneath. So that means it's not open, it is going to be closed, all right? So we're going to do a closed dot at positive 7. And again, this is saying that x is greater than 7. All the numbers bigger than 7 are 8, 9, 10. So numbers to the right. or you can think about this like an arrow and it's pointing to the right. So you shade to the right. Okay? So next question. So we're trying to solve the absolute value equation, all right? Whenever you're solving an absolute value equation, you need to make sure that the only thing you're seeing on one side is just the absolute value, and then on the other side, you have a number, okay? Because there's nothing in front of this absolute value, which are these lines right here, all right? Because there's nothing on the outside of it, on both sides, and we have just a number here, we can apply the absolute value, all right? So the absolute value means that this 17 could be either a positive 17 or a negative 17. So I would have 2x minus 1 is equal to a positive 17, or 2x minus 1 is equal to a negative 17, all right? So I'm going to go ahead and calculate, all right, or rather find x, because again it says solve. So we're going to move the negative 1 to the other side by adding 1 to both sides. That would get canceled. Now I have 2x is equal to 17 plus 1 is 18. Now I would divide by 2 on both sides because I need to break up that multiply. So x is equal to 18 divided by 2 is 9. Okay? So we have one of our values of x. Okay? But whenever you're doing absolute value functions, you always have two answers, all right? So you always are going to have two answers, okay? So to get the next answer, I would do similar things, add 1 to both sides. That would get canceled. Now I would have 2x is equal to negative 17 plus 1 is a smaller negative, negative 16. Now I would divide by 2 because I need to break up that multiply. And x is equal to a negative divided by a positive is a negative 8. All right, because 16 divided by 2 is 8. All right, and those are my two answers. All right, so the next question wants to rearrange this equation. All right, so a lot of us struggle with this question because we see only letters, but try to remember all the steps you need to take. Okay, so firstly, you check if you have any fractions. All right, so when I look at what I'm given, I don't see a fraction. All right, so again, I don't see something that looks like this. Okay. All right, so because I don't see a fraction, that means I'm not going to multiply. So I'm either going to add or subtract or divide, okay? So because I don't see an addition or subtraction sign, that means I'm going to divide, okay? So that's the first thing I'm going to have to do, divide, so that I can get h all by itself, okay? So what I'm going to divide by is the two things that are attached to h, which are m and g. So divide both sides by m and g. The divide cancels the multiplies, so I have E over mg is equal to h. Since I have h all by itself, this is my result. All right, so again, just like that. So the next question wants us to do write the equation of a parallel line. So the first thing we're going to do, guys, is that we need to try to write this equation in the form y equal mx plus b. All right. So to do that, I would need to move this x to the other side and divide by the number in front of the y. So to move a positive 4x, we will subtract 4x on both sides of our equations. This will get canceled out. And my negative 1y, all right, because again, in front of here is a negative 1, is equal to, can I subtract a number that has an x with a number that does not? No, because they're not like terms. So we're going to write this number first, the negative 4x. And then what type of 3 is that? A positive 3, okay? Now we're going to break up the multiply by dividing. So we're going to divide each of these terms by a negative 1, not just a 1. So the 1's cancel, and we have y is equal to a negative divided by negative is a positive. 4 divided by 1 is 4, okay? Normally we divide this and get negative 3, but we don't care what this number is. I'm going to replace it with the letter b. Okay? So now I'm going to do parallel. All right? The word parallel means same slope. Okay? So again, the word parallel means same slope. There are lines that are going in the same direction, but they never meet. Okay? So that means all I got to do is just keep my slope, this 4, the same. So when I'm doing that parallel, okay, my parallel is going to be the same equation, y equal 4x plus b. All right, so now I'm going to plug in the numbers for x and y. So we know that the negative 2 represents your, or the positive 2 represents your x, and the negative 1 represents your y. Okay, so I replace my y with negative 1. Okay, so again, I replace my y with negative 1, and I'm going to replace my x with 2. All right, because this 4 is not a fraction, I don't need to write it as 2 over 1. Okay, so here I would now multiply, bring this down. Okay, when I multiply, I would get 8, bring down the b. Now I need to move my positive 8 to the other side by doing the opposite of adding 8, which is subtracting 8. So your b is equal to negative 1 minus 8 is a bigger negative, negative 9. All right, so this is going to replace the b in my parallel equation. All right, so my answer, I'm going to write it in the center, is y equal 4x, and I replace the b with a minus 9. And that is my answer. All right, so now let's try to do perpendicular. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, guys, is write it in the form y equal mx plus b. All right, so I need to move my positive 3x to the other side by subtracting 3x on both sides of our equations. This will get canceled, and your positive 2y, you bring it down. Okay, we cannot subtract, so I'm going to write negative 3x. And then what type of 4 is that? A positive 4. Now I'm going to break up the multiply by dividing. Okay, so we now have y is equal to a negative divided by positive is a negative. But can you divide 3 by 2? No. So I'm going to leave it as 3 over 2x. Normally you divide it and get 2, but I'm going to replace it with the letter b. Okay, so now I'm going to do perpendicular. All right, the word perpendicular means different slope. Okay, so that means you're going to change the sign, flip the number. All right, so if you have a positive number, it will change to a negative, and then when you flip it, you're going to turn it upside down. Okay, so my perpendicular, okay, would be y equal, we change the positive to a negative, and then instead of writing 3 over 2, I'm going to write 2 over 3. All right, so again, you change sign, okay, and then flip number. Okay, so again, that's my perpendicular equation. All right, so now I'm going to plug in the numbers for x and y. So again, this is my x, this is my y. So instead of writing y, I'm going to replace y with 3 is equal to negative 2 over 3. I'm now going to replace, oh, sorry guys, I didn't remember that this stayed as a negative, so I apologize. So when I change the sign, it's actually going to go back to a positive. But it's actually going to go back to a positive after I change the sign. Okay, so x, and then, or rather, I'm going to replace x now with 8. Because this 2 over 3 is a fraction, I'm going to write this as a fraction by writing it over 1. Okay, plus b. So the 3, I'm going to bring it down, is equal to, I'm going to multiply positive 2 times 8 is positive 16. All right. All right. So I actually believe that this number should have maybe been possibly be a 9, not a 8, because again, we cannot divide 16 by 3. So more than likely, this should have been a 9, all right, because 2 times 9 is 18, and 18 is divisible by 3. So I think this should have been a 9, okay? So again, guys, we would have gotten 18. 3 times 1 is 3, okay? And then plus b. So then I would now divide. So I would get 18 divided by 3 is 6 plus b. Now I'm going to subtract 6. So my b is equal to 3 minus 6 is negative 3. All right. So this b is the b that's going to replace into my perpendicular equation. So again, it's going to replace this b right here. So my answer is going to be y equal my slope of 2 over 3x, and then my new y-intercept as -3. So again, guys, just like that, okay? So the next question, guys, wants us to write the linear equation for a table, okay? So when writing that linear equation, guys, okay, first thing we need to do is remember what the general form for a linear equation is, which is y equal mx plus b, all right? Where we know that m stands for your slope and b is your y-intercept, okay? So for the first thing we're going to do, guys, is that we're going to try to fill out something that looks like this, where it's going to be y equal some slope x and some y-intercept, all right? So the first you're going to find is your slope. So to find your slope, you're going to try to evaluate the change in y over the change in x, which is just y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, all right? So what I would normally set up is some fraction, minus sign in between, and two sets of parentheses here. So your x1 would be your first x value, your y1 would be your first y value. So I plug this -3 in here, and then on top of it, I would plug the y value 1, okay? This would now be your x2, this would be your y2. I plug in this x value down here, and I plug in the y value on top of it, all right? So now I'm going to calculate. 5 take away 1 is 4. -2 minus -3, a negative beside a negative turns into a positive. -2 plus 3 would be +1. 4 divided by 1 is 4. So my slope is 4. So now I'm going to find my y-intercept. So what we're going to do, guys, is that I'm going to write this equation and replace this number I don't know with the letter b. So it's similar to when we do parallel and perpendicular, okay? So I would have y equal 4x plus b. Now I would pick a random point to plug in. So this is what I'm plugging in. All right, so we're going to plug that in. So I replace the y with 13. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm plugging in the coordinate 0, 13. I replace the y with 13. I replace the x with 0. Okay, because again, that's the coordinate 0, 13 plus b. So we would have 13 is equal to 4 times 0 is 0 plus b. Now you would add or subtract this number, but because you cannot add or subtract 0, your b is equal to 13. So all I gotta do is replace my b right here with +13. And that's my result. Alright? So next question. So we're trying to graph an absolute value equation. Alright? So again, you write this as the entire answer, okay, with the y equal. So when I'm doing this equation, guys, alright, the first thing you're gonna do is try to identify something called your vertex. So to identify your vertex, you need to look inside of the absolute value and then on the right side of the absolute value, all right? So when I look on the inside, I see a +1. I'm going to do the opposite of that sign to get the x value of the vertex, -1, okay? And then here, I'm going to do the same as this number, so I'm going to bring down a -3, okay? So I'm going to plot that on my graph. So this is when x is -1 and y is -3. X is -1, y is -3. That's where I put my first point, okay? So now I'm going to find my other point by plugging in numbers to the left of my x, of my point, and then to the right. So I'm going to first plug in -2, okay? So I'm going to plug in -2, then I'm going to plug in a number to the right of it, 0, okay? So when I plug in when x is -2, I'm going to plug it into this equation. I would have 2 absolute value, parentheses -2 plus 1 absolute value minus 3. So now I'm going to calculate the 2 I would bring down. We're going to calculate on the inside. -2 plus 1 would be a -1 inside of the absolute value. Okay. and then the minus 3 I would bring down, okay? So the 2 is going to be multiplied after we apply the absolute value. The absolute value makes this number turn into a positive number, okay? And the negative 3 I bring down. 2 now multiplies by 1, and we get 2. And then the negative 3 I bring down. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. So when I plugged in negative 2, I got negative 1. All right? So now I'm going to plug in 0. So I would do the same equation. 2 absolute value, parentheses 0, okay, plus 1 minus 3. The 2 I would bring down, okay. 0 plus 1 is 1. The negative 3 I would bring down, okay. So apply the absolute value, but it just makes this number turn into a positive or stay a positive in this case. So we'd have 2 multiplied by 1. And then 2 times 1 is 2. And then the negative 3 I bring down. So that when I calculate 2 minus 3, I got negative 1. So if you realize, when I plugged in 0, I also got negative 1. So let's plot those points real quickly. So negative 2 for the x, and negative 1 for the y. And then 0 for the x, negative 1 for the y. So if you look, guys, we kind of went up 2, right once, more than, and then up to left once. And again, points are symmetric about your mean, about your vertex, okay? So you could just assume that the next set would be up 2, right once again. So this one, up 2, left once. So up 1, 2, left once. So here, all right? And then you could do the same thing, up 1, so wait. Up 1, 2, right once, and then up 1, 2, right once, up 1, 2, left once, all right, and then just connect all those. So again, after you put all your points, you click done plotting, and then be careful when you connect all these lines together, all right. So again, guys, just like that, okay. And I knew it was going to be a V shape because there was a positive number in front. If there was a negative number in front, then it would have been an upside down V. All right. So next questions. So the next question 11 wants us to identify whether something is a function or not. All right. By either using the vertical line test or evaluating the points. Okay. So if you're trying to figure out which one is not a function, x values cannot repeat. So again, x values cannot, I repeat, cannot repeat, okay? So if the x value repeats, that is not a function, all right? So when I look at here, this is your x, this is your y, your x, your y, your x, your y, your x, and then your y, all right? So again, we're looking where they don't repeat, okay? Here I see 2, negative 1, negative 7, negative 7. All right? Because we see a negative 7 2 times for the x, that is the answer. That is not a function. All right? So again, this one is not. All right? So again, we already have our answer, but let's see if these ones are also not functions. All right? Because again, we could maybe even have multiple answers. So here we have our x or y, x or y, x or y, x and y, but we're focused on the x. So here we have 3, 8, negative 6, negative 8. Negative 8 is different from positive 8. So this one is a function. All right. So here we have negative 7, 3, positive 7, 1. So negative 7 is different from positive 7. So this one is a function. Here we have 1, negative 7, 8, negative 9. Nothing repeated for the x. So this is also a function. But because we're looking for which one is not, this is the one that's not, so this is the answer. All right, so again, just like that. So when you're solving a system of graphing, all right, what you need to do, guys, is that you need to make sure that your equations are in the form y equal mx plus b, all right? One of our equations is already good, so that means I can go ahead and plot it, okay? So to plot it, you always graph your y-intercept first, okay? So again, you always graph this number first, on your y-axis. So I'm going to go to -2 on my y-axis, and I'm going to put a dot there. Okay, now I'm going to apply my slope. Okay, so now I'm going to apply my slope. So my slope is a 2, or I can write it as 2 over 1. The reason I write it as 2 over 1 is so that I can use my rise over run. Okay, rise tells you up or down, run tells you left or right. 99% of the time you're going to the right. Because this is a positive number, that means it's going to go up once, and then we're going to go to the right one. Up twice and then right once. So we're going to go up 1, 2 times, and then right once. Okay? So now I'm going to draw my line, or once you do those points, it will make your line. So now I need to get my next line, all right? But to get my next line, this needs to be in the form y equal mx plus b. This is not in that form. So to get it in that form, I would move the 2x to the other side by subtracting 2x on both sides. That would get canceled. The 3y, I would bring it down. Can I subtract? No, because they're not like terms. So I'm going to write the -2x. And then what type of 18 is that? A positive 18. Okay, so now I'm going to break up the multiply by dividing each of these terms by positive 3. All right, so now we would have y is equal to a negative divided by positive stays as a -2 over 3x. Because again, you cannot divide 2 by 3. Normally, you would replace this with b, but because we're not doing parallel and perpendicular, I want to know what that is. 18 divided by 3 is positive 6. All right. So now we're going to graph it. So I'm going to graph the y-intercept first. Okay, so I'm going to go to positive 6. So it looks like right here. Now I'm going to apply my slope. So my slope is -2 over 3. Always apply the negative only to the number at the top, only to the numerator. So when I use my rise over run, okay, so again, we know that this tells up or down, left or right. Because a -2 means I'm going to go down 2 times and then right 3 times. So down 1, 2, and right 1, 2, 3. Bam. All right. So now I can net my lines together. All right. So then now I look at where they intersect. So it seems they intersected when so it seems like they intersected when x was 3 and when y was 4. All right. So again, guys, that would be the result. Okay. So the next question wants us to solve a system by doing something called elimination. All right. So when you're doing elimination, guys, this is what you're going to do. You're going to look at the numbers in front of your first and second equation. All right. And then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to multiply this equation by that same number. Okay. Now I'm going to look at the number at my bottom equation. Okay. That number is a positive 2. Now I'm going to multiply the top equation by the negative or the different sign of that 2. So a -2. All right. So what we're doing here is same as the top. All right. And then flip bottom. All right. So again, same as the top, flip the bottom. Same as the top, flip the bottom. Same as the top, flip the bottom. All right. So when I say flip, I mean flip the sides. So now I'm going to multiply by each of these terms. -2 times 4x is -8x. -2 times a negative in front of here is a 1. -2 times a -1 gives me a positive 2y. All right, and -2 times 11 is -22. So now I'm going to distribute the 4. Okay, 4 times 2x is 8x. 4 times -4y is -16y. And then 4 times -104. You can use your calculator for that. All right. So now I'm going to calculate. Okay. So -8x plus 8x is 0, or they cancel out. 2y minus 6y is -14y. Okay. And -22 minus 104 is -126. All right. So negative 126 divided by negative 14 would give me, so again here, I would now break up the multiply by dividing. So again, you can plug this in your calculator. So if I plug this in my calculator, negative 126 divided by 14, I would get 9, okay? So I would get 9, because a negative divided by negative gives me a positive, all right? So now I'm going to plug this into my second equation. So I'm going to have 2x minus 4, and I'm going to replace y with 9. So I replace y with 9, okay? Equal negative 26. The 2x I would bring down. Negative 4 I'm going to multiply by 9, and I get negative 36 equal negative 26. Now I'll move this to the other side by adding 36 on both sides. That would get canceled. Now I would have 2x is equal to negative 26 divided by plus 36, would give me positive 10. Now I break up the multiply by dividing. So my x is equal to 10 divided by 2 is 5. All right. So your answer would be 5, 9. This is how you would put your answer. You don't need to put the parentheses, just put the numbers. All right. So again, just like that. So the next question wants us to graph the solution. So we need to graph the linear inequality on this. All right. So first things first, you need to make sure your equations are in the form y equal mx plus b. Okay. When I look, both my equations are already in that form. Okay. So all I gotta do now is graph them. So I graph this first. Okay. So I graph my negative 4 on my y-axis. That looks like right here. In front of this x is technically a negative 1, or I can write the slope as negative 1 over 1. All right, so again, it's the same as negative 1 over 1. And again, we're using our rise over run, so that means we're going to go down once, right once. Okay, so we're going to go down once, right once. Okay, so now we're going to figure out the type of line we're going to draw. All right, because this is the part that's important. Okay, whenever you have a greater than or less than sign, that means it's open and it will be a dotted line. Okay? Whenever you have a greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, that means this will be a closed dot, which will be a solid line. Because here there's no line underneath, it's just a greater than sign, we would have a dotted line. So again, here I would draw a dotted line. All right, on delta, you're going to have to draw the line, then click dotted, and then click the line. All right, so now we're going to shade. So it says that y is greater. So again, this is a greater than sign. Whenever it's saying y is greater, that means you're going to shade above. All right, so I'm going to shade above my line, because if I'm greater than my line, that means I'm on top of my line. I'm bigger. All right, so now I'm going to graph my next line. So you always graph the y-intercept first. Okay, so I'm going to graph a positive 1 on my y-axis. So that looks like right here. Okay, now I'm going to apply my slope. My slope is 1 over 4. That means I'm going to go up once, right 4 times. So I'm going to go up once, right 1, 2, 3, 4 times. All right. So now you need to figure out the type of line you're going to have. Because there's a line underneath, that means it's going to be closed and you'll have a solid line. All right. So what I'm going to do now is graph my solid line. All right. Because again, we did see a or equal to. This is saying that y is less than. I know that this is a less than sign because it looks like an L. Whenever it looks like an L, it's less than. And a backwards L is greater than. All right. So again, in this case, it says y is less than. So if I'm less than my line, am I going to be above it or below it? I'm going to be below because I'm less than my line. So I'm going to shade below. All right. And then wherever you see a mixture of two colors, that's where your solution is going to be. So here, there's nothing shaded here. Down here in the lower V part, so down here, it's only shaded in red. up here is only shaded in black. Over here is shaded in both red and black. So this is where your solution is going to be. I always say that your solution is in the darkest shaded area, so you can pick any point here. So for example, you could pick this point right here, which looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, -1. So 6, -1 could be an answer. Also something maybe over here, maybe 9, -3, all right? Maybe +2, -2, all right? So any one of these could be a solution. You can pick any one, all right? So the next question. So the next question says, what is the equation that is going to model this exponential function? So what is an equation to model the scenario below? $2,000 is placed in a savings account with an annual interest rate of 5%. If no money is added or removed from the account, identify an equation to represent how much money, or rather how much will be in the account after 10 years. Okay, so anytime you're seeing that you have some starting amount that's changing by some percentage, you know it's exponential. All right, so the general form for exponential is y equal art. Okay, so I like to say art or ART. So because again, if you guys know the car SRT, you'll know the mathematical model ART, where the A represents your initial value, the R represents your rate, and the T represents time. Okay, so what we're going to do is that we're going to write an equation, y equal, all right, some initial value, some rate over some period of time. All right, because it says $2,000 was placed in the account before it gained interest, that 2,000 would be your initial. All right, because again, it's what you started with. Okay, so the 2,000 will go right here. Okay, now we're going to identify time, because time is the next easiest thing to find. So it says no money was added or removed from the account. Identify the equation to represent how much will be in the account after 10 years. Because years is time, this 10 represents your time that we're evaluating this function for. Okay, so now we're going to identify the rate. That's the only part that's a little difficult to identify. So it says we're trying to have annual interest. Interest would be something that you're gaining, so we're going to have to add that, okay? But what am I adding it to? Well, we always say we're going to start off like a full charge phone. We're going to start off with 100%. Because we're gaining interest, that means you're gaining. That means you add, all right? So we're going to add 5%, which will give me 105%. But whenever you represent your rate is a decimal. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to act like there's a point here, and I'm going to move the point 2 times to the left. All right? So now my point would now be 1.05. And that's what's going to go inside of here. Okay? So that would be my equation, guys. And if you want to solve it, okay, you just plug this part right here. Instead of everything except the y, you plug this part here in the calculator, and it will calculate what your answer is. All right? But again, all it said was just identify an equation or write an equation. All right? So next question. So the next question wants to write the exponential function for a table. So whenever you write an exponential function, all right, this is the form you're going to use. You're going to use y equal a parentheses b to the x. So it's similar to this, all right, but it's just only thing is just it has different letters, okay? So the a represents the same thing, your initial, all right? The b represents the same thing, your rate, and then this x will stay the same. So this will stay the same, all right? So we would have an equation, y equals some initial value, some rate, and then the x stays the same, all right? So your initial is whatever you start with, guys, okay? In this case, your initial value will be when your x value is 0 and the what that y value is, okay? So again, I'm going to look for when x is 0, all right? And then what y value do we see? 100. So that 100 will be my initial, all right? So again, you look for when your x is 0, okay? So now I'm going to find my rate. So to find your rate, all you're going to do is that you're going to do this minus our previous number divided by this minus our previous number. So that should look like what formula? y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay? So again, I normally set it up like this, where I have a fraction minus sign, 2 pairs of parentheses. So again, you know that this is your x1, y1, so x1 goes here, y1 goes on top of it. This is your x2, y2, so x2 goes down here, y2 goes on top of it. Okay, now I'm going to calculate 50 minus 100 is negative 50, and then 1 minus 0 is 1, negative 50 divided by 1 is negative 50. So inside of here, I'll plug in a negative 50. All right, which makes sense because again, this number is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So this right here is all you need to type for your equation. So again, just like that, this always stays as an x. Okay. So the next question, we're almost there. So next question wants to solve the quadratic by factoring. All right. So when you're trying to solve, that means you're finding x. But for me to find x, we're actually going to move everything to the same side first. So again, move everything to same side. All right. So move everything to same side. All right. So that's what we're going to do first. Okay. So we're going to move the positive 6 over here because again, we have more things over here than here. So to move a positive 6x, I will subtract 6x. Would I subtract it now from x squared? No, because that's not the like term. Negative x, yes, because that's the like term. Okay. This will get canceled. The x squared, I'm not adding or subtracting anything to it, so I bring it down. Here, I have a negative 1x and minus 6x. It's negative 7x. And then the 12, I'm not adding or subtracting anything to it. I bring it down. These cancel. They leave me with nothing. What's representing nothing? All right, so again, this cancel out, left us with nothing. 0 represents nothing. All right, so I'll write this now into something called factored form. Okay, so now we're going to do factored form. Okay, so factored form. All right, so factored form is 2 pairs of parentheses. Okay, so now we're going to ask ourselves, what gives us an x squared when you multiply? Well, x multiplied by x is x squared, so I put 2 x's here. Okay, now I'm going to find all the numbers that multiply to give me 12, which are 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. All right, so those are all the pairs. Okay, so which one would add or subtract to give me a 7? 1 and 12 would not work. 2 and 6 would not work. 3 and 4 would work. So I would have a 3 and a 4. Now I figure out the signs. When you see a positive here, think about same signs, all right? What same signs will give me a negative 7? 2 negatives, all right? And you can always check this to make sure, okay? So again, you can always check this. Negative 3 minus 4 is indeed negative 7, all right? If we had, so again, that's what we wanted. If we had a negative 3 and a positive 4, that would give me 1. That's not what we wanted. We wanted negative 7. If we have a positive 3 and a negative 4, that would give me negative 1. That's not what we wanted. We wanted negative 7. And if we had 2 positive numbers, we would have gotten positive 7, but we wanted a negative 7. All right. So again, we would have a negative 3 and a negative 4. All right. So all you got to do now, guys, to solve is just set each of these equal to 0. So x minus 3 equals 0. X minus 4 equals 0. Okay. So then I would add 3. So my x is equal to 3. Here I would add 4. So your x is equal to 4. All right. So those are your 2 answers, your 2 values of x. All right. So here you'll have 2 answers almost all the times. All right. So next question, all right? So the next question wants us to use exponential rules, all right? So when using exponential rules, guys, what we're going to do, guys, is that we're going to try to multiply, because in this case, we're being asked product rule, all right? So product means multiply. So what I'm going to do first, guys, is I'm going to multiply the numbers, okay? So I'm going to do 2 multiplied by -4, okay? Then I'm going to multiply the letters. So t to the third multiplied by t to the third, okay? So when I multiply 2 times -4, I get -8, okay? When I multiply these, I add the exponents. So again, when you're doing product rule, whenever you're multiplying things that have the same terms, we add exponents, okay? So when I add 3 plus 3, I would get 6. And that would be the result, okay? So next question. So the next question wants to do a different rule. Here we're doing quotient rule. So product is when we add. So quotient is going to be when we subtract. All right. So product means we add exponents. Quotient means we subtract exponents. Okay. But the first thing we need to do, guys, is that we're going to apply something called power rule first. Okay. So because we have no parentheses up here, this is going to stay the same. Okay. Because we do have a parentheses here, I'm going to need to multiply. Here, the exponent, when you don't say an exponent, is a 1. So I'm going to multiply. So down here, I would have 3 to the 3 times 1 is 3. And then p to the 4 times 3 is 12. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and expand. So this, I'm going to leave the same for now because I need to apply this exponent first. Okay, if you plug this in your calculator, 3 to the third power, you will get 27. But what you're really doing here is 3 times 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. All right, and then the p to the 12 will stay the same. Okay, so now I'm going to try to simplify the numbers because there is a number I can divide both 12 and 27 by. All right. That number is 3. So now I'm going to simplify. So again, now I'm simplifying. Okay. So 12 and 27 are both divisible by 3. Divide by 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. 27 divided by 3 is 9. Okay. So now we have a p to the 6th, p to the 12. All right, so since we are now going to subtract the exponents, all right, 6 minus 12 would be 6. Or this is what's easier. You could write this as 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 p's over 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 p's. And then start canceling out p's. So we can cancel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 p's can be canceled. All right. So my answer is going to be 4 over 9. So there's no p's on the top, so that we only have 4 at the top. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 p's remaining. So p to the 6th. And that would be my result. All right. I recommend writing down all these p's and seeing how they eliminate. But if you guys can realize that 6 or 12, we have 6 p's up here, we have 12 down here, so we have more down here than here. So when we subtract, we'll only have 6 of them remaining at the bottom. All right. So let's try the last one. So we're trying to divide polynomials by a monomial. So whenever we see a fraction and we see this denominator for everything, this is called a common denominator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this as negative 12x to the 6 divided by my common denominator, 4x squared, positive 4x to the 4th, divided by my common denominator, negative 4x squared, and positive 16x squared y squared, divided by negative 4x squared. Okay, so now I'm going to divide, all right? So again, here we have negative 12 divided by negative 4. We can divide negative 12 by negative 4, and we get positive 3 because a negative divided by negative gives me a positive. All right. Here I have 6 x's at the top, so I have 6 x's at the top, 6, and I have 2 at the bottom, so I can get rid of 2 of them, so I'm left with 4 of them at the top, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, so write that as x to the 4th. Or just do 6 minus 2, which is 4, okay? 4 divided by negative 4, a positive divided by negative is a negative, 4 divided by 4 is 1. We have 4 x's up here, okay? 2 down here, okay? So we can cancel out 2 of them, so I'm left with 2, so x to the 2nd power. Or just do 4 minus 2. So now we're going to calculate here. Positive divided by negative is a negative. 16 divided by 4 is 4. All right. So here we have 2 x's up here, but we have also 2 down here. So that means all my x's are canceled out. So I'm left with no x's, but here I have some y's, okay? But did I cancel out any y's, guys? No. So I bring down my y squared because I did not cancel out any y's. So I brought it down. So this is my result. So again, guys, that is it.